you are going to do for dinner this evening. It's a negotiation. So let's look at how things have been. And in particular, let's look at this key question about the art of negotiation. So what we're going to do is we're going to help you think about your current level of negotiation skills, recent developments in negotiation techniques as well, and the online element. We'll also look at a couple of tools that will enhance your negotiation outcomes so that you can approach your next negotiation. That could be this evening, yeah, with some new ideas. So, has the art of negotiation evolved? Are we ready? I'm going to give you the answer now, but the answer is not enough. The answer is yes, but it's not enough, because what you will want to know is not just whether it has or not. I'm sure many of you would agree with me that it has, but why has it evolved? And in particular, how has it evolved? Well, let's look at what's involved with negotiation, and also firstly, look at what stays the same. And in terms of what stays the same, it's everything. Firstly, everything stays the same because everything in life is negotiable. I am sure, like me, you have heard people refer to things as, well, that's not negotiable, and that's not negotiable. I'm also sure that you've come across situations where you've heard those words, and then perhaps a few minutes later, a few hours later, a few days later, you discover actually it was negotiable after all. This part of negotiation actually stays the same. It has always been the case. What also stays the same? Well, nothing, not least because no two negotiations are exactly the same. Amongst the 8 or 9 billion people on the planet, there are billions of negotiations happening every day. Each one will have its own particular subtlety and nuance. The other thing that stays the same, and the other principle that has not evolved and will always stay the same, is that when it comes to negotiation, there are no rules. There is no one to tell you that you must do this or you must not do that. You can do this. There are no rules. You can do anything you like in any way you like. However, there are some things which generally will be more effective than others. And these are some of the things that we're going to look at this afternoon. Let's start by looking at the essentials of what's going on in negotiation, and indeed what you are communicating in negotiation. And in any negotiation, whatever is going on, there's always two important elements at stake. First of all, what we've got is what I call the transaction. In other words, what it is you are negotiating about. I changed a car last week. Okay, we got one car. This is my wife's car. We saw another one that we would like as well. So changing the car, that is a transaction. In that situation, I was both the buyer and the seller. We was part exchanging my vehicle. So I was, you know, if you like, there's two transactions in one. But what's also going on is I'm building a relationship while I'm doing that and while I'm negotiating. And recognizing that in every negotiation, there are two elements, helps guide us towards the key principles of what's going to make us effective, and also help shape what is going on during the 2020s. Because anyone can negotiate a transaction. I notice that back in the cinemas, and I come to you from the UK, so this is in the cinemas in the UK, is a worldwide classic Hollywood movie released on its, or re-released on its 50th anniversary, The Godfather, which famously contains a line about negotiation. that someone is going to make someone an offer they cannot refuse. This, of course, is not necessarily negotiation, or is it? I think the line in the film goes something that either your signature or your brains end up on this piece of paper. If someone has got a gun to your head, then that's focusing on the transaction, not the relationship. If you focus on the transaction and not the relationship, or sorry, if you're not focusing on either transaction or relationship, it's a lose-lose. If you're focusing on the transaction, but you're not bothered about the relationship, that's a win-lose. That's, I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. Okay, that's the Godfather, the gun to your head, which I hope is only a metaphorical gun to your head, by the way. Okay, that's the win-lose situation. The financial services industry, I regret to say, has got a history of win-lose. In some cases, financial institutions have undertaken transactions with their customers that have ended up not always being in the customer's best interests. And when sometimes, some years later, the customers discover that, they lose a lot of trust and a lot of loyalty in the institution. Financial institutions have done things like lose customer relationships because they've won the transaction. One of the biggest examples worldwide in this is Wells Fargo. If you look at what was going on with some of their staff who were falsifying accounts and opening new accounts without customers knowing about them, and without telling them everything that was going on. The staff there were looking to win, and it didn't matter if the clients lost. Ultimately, in that situation, everyone lost. Okay. Of course, you can go to the other extreme, is that you could be so customer focused that all you're looking to do is build a relationship and actually not do the necessary business you need to do on the terms you need to do it for it to be sustainable. For those of you who plead that you are always customer first, well, customers can only come first as long as you remain profitable enough to be sustainable. In other words, there's got to be something in it for you. Yeah. So you've got to be aware of what I call lose-win, where all you're doing is building relationship, but the transaction side is not enough to keep you going. At this stage, I know that you know what's coming next. And I know that you've already worked out what's going on in the top right-hand box. That's not the question. The question is going to be, how are you going to get to the top right-hand box? And how are you going to go there? What that might mean is that along the way, there may be time spent in the lose, 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 win, win, lose kind of arena before you can build the necessary relationship and put everything you need to do in terms of a successful transaction. But let's be clear about negotiations. Ultimately, what you're looking to do is have a successful transaction with someone that has worked out so well, you want to have another successful transaction with them again soon. Oh, and it's not just what you want. It's also that they want to transact with you again. So there's a long and a strong relationship element. So let's look at one component of this. What happens when you're winning? Because when we're talking about the winning, this is a basic tool, which again, for the 2020s is going to remain fully relevant, just as it always has. What I would say is that in practice, not everyone has always used this tool in this way. It's the art of winning. In other words, particularly for that transaction side of the diagram I've shown to you, what in terms of the transaction is it that you want? Yeah. What's your wildest dreams? What's the best outcomes that you're looking for?
Can I just mention that we have a question on your previous slide? If you can answer now to give an example of a lose-lose negotiation that is quite challenging. And I will add on that diagram that you show, if to reach a negotiation maybe both sides need to go through the whole stages. First, lose, then win-lose, or whatever.
Okay, so a lose-lose negotiation, right? Really easy example. If you've ever been in the same room or even on the same Zoom, okay, as someone, and actually you've left that without doing any business and without building any relationship, you've both lost. Okay. At any time where you are with another human being, there is the possibility of some benefit. And if either because you like them or because you do something with them. And if you're with a human being and that doesn't happen, it's a lose-lose. Okay. So that's where we are on the lose-lose. Sorry, Paniotis, what was the other question?
The question that I want to ask you about this diagram, when you are going to reach to a win-win negotiation, maybe you need to pass through all the other situations, win-lose, lose-lose, or whatever, before you reach to win-win. Is that the case, or?
Well, as we've said, everything is negotiable, which means that there is no one route to getting to the top right-hand corner. Okay, depends on the dynamics of the situation. But the overall principle is that you get in the diagram here, which is to pursue what you want in terms of your transaction, but at the same time, pursue a good relationship, which is going to continue. Ultimately, it's pursuing those two things at the same time that's going to take you to the top right-hand corner.
All right, thank you.
Okay. How do you do that? Here's a tool that's going to help you on the transaction side of things. You've already seen what part of this is. Okay. Outline in advance what you want. Not only advance what you want, but be clear about what you need. What's the minimum you are looking for? Your bottom line, if you will. Okay. What I do find when I'm working in this area with people is that people are quite commonly going into negotiations thinking about what they need, what is the minimum that they would accept. But they don't often think about how much upside there might be, what it is they can want. And therefore, when you've got these things, you can also think about what is likely to happen. Because in any negotiation from a transaction point of view, you don't have to settle for the absolute minimum. You're unlikely to get things beyond your wildest dreams in every situation. So be realistic. What's in between? Yeah. And incidentally, in between does not have to be 50% of the difference between what you want and what you need. Okay. You do not have to split the difference every time. The other thing I find when working with people is also how rarely they think about this in advance. One of the great secrets of successful negotiation is not just what you're doing in the moment with the person, it's what you do before you get to see them and before you get to speak to them. Yeah, that's where you can win it. You can visualize it. What you're going to visualize? Visualize what your win is going to be. Yeah. Now, when we're talking about you visualizing and visualizing your win, what we're talking about here is what we call your position. Your position is this surface statement of what it is you want or what it is you need. But that's actually not the most important thing. And particularly, what you need to focus on as a negotiator is not just your position, but the position of the person or the people that you are negotiating with as well. However, how are you going to get this to change? This is one of the dynamics of negotiation as well. No two situations are the same, and things will undoubtedly have been changing over the last 2 years during the pandemic. They will continue to. And what's driving these things is not just the positions, but people's interests, their underlying motivations. when we're negotiating, very frequently the conversation may be about, let's say, a price or something like that. That's actually not what's always most important. What's most important, particularly with the price element, is why does someone regard that price level as important? What's the motivation for wanting that? What's the motivation for needing it? Because understanding someone's underlying motivation is the key to unlocking and maybe even changing their position. Let me just share with you a very brief and a very simple example. Incidentally, I'm a professional trainer. I work a lot in financial services. I hope you don't think that all the time I buy and sell cars and motorcycles and things, but here's an example from me selling my motorcycle. Incidentally, in Nicosia, you have an excellent motorcycle museum. Last time I was there, I went there. I think it was only €5 to get in. And if you like motorcycles, it's paradise. Anyway, I sold my motorcycle. And I did this last autumn, just before the weather got really bad. It was an old motorcycle. It wasn't the most special one in the world. And when I looked the market to see the kind of prices, generally speaking, the age and make and model that I was selling was about 2,000, maybe 2,200 pounds. That'd be, say, about 2,500 euros. And I thought, how much, shall I ask for it? But I also knew that whoever was going to call me or come and see me would offer me less up front. So the question is, how much would I be prepared to take for it? And I thought, maybe, okay, I would take £1,200. Someone would come in with a much lower offer. It did need some work doing on it. But, the more I thought about it, the more I thought, no, I wouldn't take £1,200. Actually, what I would probably take at least would be £1,550. It's an odd amount. Why would I have done that? This was because of my interests. So the pricing, if I advertised it at, say, 2,000 and was listening to an offer, those are the positions. But what's important is my interests. Why would I not take less than 1,550? I'll tell you why. It was because 6 years previously, 1,550 is what I had paid for it. And I just kind of liked the idea of getting my money back and 6 years free use of a motorcycle. This is irrational, isn't it? Okay, this is nothing to do with logic. This is just an emotion that I like the feeling of getting back what I'd paid for it. Incidentally, I have sold it. It did go. I was offered initially 1,750. I actually got 1,775, and the reason it went down is it did need 2 new tires. Okay, I was going to get rid of it. There, hey, I even made some money. But that's what I mean about your positions and your interests. The interests are the motivations. Okay, very clear if it's a thing like my motorcycle, but think about what's going on in terms of your interests when you're, pricing your products and services, conducting the negotiations. Think too about the interests of the people you're negotiating with. This may be your clients and your suppliers. What is it that's driving their positions? Okay. The other thing that continues to evolve, but is also a vital part of negotiations, has always been the case, but I think was highlighted where, if we look back at the history of negotiations, it was highlighted particularly in one of the most famous books on negotiation called Getting to Yes. Okay, considered by many to be kind of the Bible for negotiation. And they introduced now, oh, by the way, this is getting on for 50 years ago, right? But they introduced this other concept called your BATNA. Okay, your walkaway positions. The BATNA, which is your and by the way, if you're taking notes, here's 6 words to write down. Okay, here you go. The best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Yeah, it's some iterations this comes out as your best alternative to no agreement, because in any negotiation you're entering into, you must go into it with the realization that there's a possibility it won't work out, because not every negotiation does. Yeah. Now, I know when we're going into negotiations, we have positive intentions, and that's fine. But one of the secrets of success is working out what's going to happen in advance if it doesn't work. What is your best alternative to no agreement? If the client actually doesn't want what is going to be your best terms, in other words, the minimum you would be prepared to offer, what are you going to do? Is it you're going to go away and find another client? Is it you're going to leave it for a while? You work it out in advance, and that's why this is called your walk away position. Some of the issue could be if you are in a situation where you've got a more or less monopoly provider, okay, and then there's only one alternative. What choices do you have there? Well, remember, everything in life is negotiable. It's a case of looking for what is possible, asking for what's possible, exploring not just the positions, but the interests on things. Okay. So those underlying principles, many of those have actually stayed the same from almost time immemorial, even if it's only in more recent years that they've been characterized as tools and techniques that will help you. But what's been going on more recently? Let's have a look, particularly in terms of negotiating online. The last 2 years have meant a significant increase in our online negotiations, and particularly what we are doing this afternoon on Zoom, but you're also doing on Teams and Google Hangouts and other virtual platforms. There's so much more negotiation taking place now. So what's going on? Some things actually remain the same. That the underlying principles of your preparation for negotiation still remain the same. But things about your online setup would also help. Now, by now, we're approaching the halfway point. You will have already been forming some impressions of how I come across online. If you would like to, go to the chat now and just put in some words that describe how I have come across to you so far. In terms of the basic stuff, things like, how do I look? What do you notice about how I look? What are you noticing about things like the body language, okay, and the messaging that you are picking up? How am I coming across now? Because the significant difference with the online, and bear in mind that for many of us up until 2 years ago, it was a case of face-to-face and in the room, or maybe on the telephone. But the online thing has transformed things and has changed things really quite dramatically. Hopefully you found me fairly calm. Thank you very much indeed for that. And actually, that's a positive, you're usually seen as a positive kind of attribute, certainly in negotiation situations. You can get emotions involved. The question is getting the emotion in tune with the message that you want to put across. Okay. Notice also how I'm looking and what's going on just in terms of basic kind of appearance as well. And there's some, thank you, you're being very kind in the chat as well. Some words like sophisticated, confident, clear communication, clear, steady pace. Let's look at some of the ingredients, shall we? Number one, I think, and I hope on your device, whatever it is, you can see my eyes. Absolutely crucial in negotiation, even if I've got my spectacles on. It might be even better without. But being able to see your eyes is very important. How can we do that? There's a couple of things. First of all, look at this, my camera angle. We've got this so that the camera is at eye level. If you're using a laptop on a table, you're looking down at it. The camera's looking up your nose. It's not your best angle. Okay. And the whole looking down thing actually looks like you're not really adapting to the other person that well. Another factor, light. You can see my eyes because I'm fortunate enough where I am. I've got a window behind my camera. Light comes onto my face and onto the background. So you can see things relatively clearly. Also, the camera position. You can see the whole of my face and indeed all of that brain. You see the brain the size of a planet here. I know in my case there's more of it on display than there is for some of you. But these are some of the things that help build trust. It's the transparency and the openness. A couple of other things. Have you noticed I've put a shirt on for you? Not just a shirt, but actually a shirt with a collar. It's a work shirt. I've got a jacket on as well, because what you wear subtly sends a signal out to other people. By the way, particularly when you're working virtually, what's going to work on a camera is usually a bold, solid color. It's what helps distinguish you against the background. It also prevents that kind of fuzzy look that you get around you from a camera, sometimes if you're using a virtual background or a color. Oh, and I don't use a virtual background, as you've seen. This is my book, my background. These are real books. It's not a virtual bookcase. I've even read some of these. And what's in your background is just one of the things that helps form an impression for people. Okay, you don't always have to have a bookcase. You don't always have to have a dark blue shirt, and you don't have to have an haircut like I've got. But what you can do is think about how easy it is for people to see you and therefore trust you. And this is where the body language and the messaging is going to come across. Okay, so there's been tremendous change there.
May I make a question? This was the first communication with the participant, let's say, on that occasion. I mean, the way you are going to get dressed or the background will be affected in terms of how well you know the other person.
Absolutely. There's a load of variations here, but what I'd say about the whole way we negotiate online and how we come across, look, if I was negotiating with Mark Zuckerberg, I would wear something different. I think I've got a hoodie somewhere and I would get that out. Yeah.
Maybe it was Facebook.
Yeah. So
yeah. Okay.
There is no one right or wrong way of going about this. But what I do highlight to you is a mixture of some of the fundamentals of what's going to help build trust, that people can see your eyes, for example, combined with the other variables about what's going to be most appropriate and most effective for the people you are negotiating with. And they may come from different backgrounds and different situations. Okay. And think about what you can vary so you can come across. Okay. A couple of other points as well. Always be aware that there is the possibility that you are being recorded. Now, this webinar is being recorded today, but even if it wasn't being recorded on Zoom, someone might well have their phone going in the background and be recording what you're saying. Yeah, it's easy enough to set up to record the visuals as well if you want. So do be aware that whatever you're saying, whatever you're doing in negotiation, in 2022, it may be there for posterity. Actually, it may even find its way onto social media if you're good enough. Yeah. I think the other specific technique which remains relevant when negotiating online is that of making sure that you summarize what is being agreed as you go along. Okay, is making sure, particularly as negotiations happen in complex areas. I've been working recently with an organization which is expanding by acquisition. So they've been taking over multiple companies. And in takeover negotiations, there's a whole range of variables to be done there. So making sure that things are summarized, which is important because the negotiations online often get broken up into 60-minute, 90-minute chunks, as opposed to, say, a one-day full complex negotiation and things. So they can be spread out over longer periods of time. This is where the summarizing becomes particularly important. So there's some thoughts on what's going on in terms of online. Let's now look at another more recent development and, if you like, a trend, certainly something that's getting talked about in academic circles with negotiation. It's this. Now, it's not this specific one. This is just an example of one. This particular one actually was made by my daughter. And it was made by my daughter some while ago, as you may be able to tell from the picture. This was on a relatively sunny day, not like today. But it's this. And what we're looking at here is not what it is, it's how big it is. Because in negotiating, one of the things to be aware of is not just the size of the slice of cake you are negotiating about. It is an awareness of also the overall size of the cake in general. It's thinking on multiple levels of what's going on, thinking on multiple levels of what is achievable in any negotiation. Yeah. Let's have a look at the situation here. I'm going to share with you an example, and I'm going to outline a financial situation. There's going to be a couple of questions that are coming up, so stand by to go into the chat and let me have some answers on here. Let me outline the situation to you, and then I'll give you a moment or two in the chat just to think about what this situation is and where it is going. We're talking about two people, one of whom we've called A and one of whom we've called B. Okay. A has got $5,000. If you prefer, we can have 5,000 euros. That's absolutely fine. And they can buy a certificate of deposit, or if you like it, you know, some sort of bank account, and they can earn 1% on it. Now, depending on how interest rates are going and exactly what's happening in the world economy at the moment, 1% could be perceived as great or not a lot, but given certainly overall interest rate levels, 1% is not too bad in some places. B, on the other hand, has got $20,000. They can also buy a CD and they can earn 2%. And this is the classic financial services situation that institutions are prepared to offer a higher rate of interest for a larger amount of money, very simply because it's less effort for them in terms of attracting that deposit. Okay, so one person's got one opportunity and another person's got another opportunity. However, you can get a certificate of deposit if you've got $25,000, which could earn 3%. Okay, you'll notice here we've been keeping the numbers fairly simple just to illustrate the concept. In other words, you've got two people here. They have both got some cake available to them, but there is the possibility of a larger slice of cake or a larger cake if they were to work together. Yeah. Now, this is a particular negotiation scenario, which is actually quite common, where what you're looking for is the synergy out of working with someone, not just can I sell and you buy. All right. It's how could we work together to both achieve a mutual aim. So here's the first question. What is the size of the opportunity here? So I know we work with financial services professionals. I know you're clever people. Some of you may have one of these handy, which could save a little bit of time. It does save a little bit of brain work. But have a think about this. What is the size of the opportunity in this example? Have a think just for a moment and go into the chat and think and give us an answer about what is the potential opportunity. Okay, we know that there is an opportunity for A if they act on their own. We also know that there's a different opportunity for B if they act on their own. But if they work together, then the scale of the opportunity actually becomes really rather different. So think about, firstly, what is the size of that overall opportunity? Okay. Now, when we are looking at this, I think there's some other very important questions and things going on, because one of the key parts of negotiation, and this position, by the way, comes from an article in the Harvard Business Review magazine called Rethinking Negotiation, which came up just at the very end of last year. So this is really quite hot off the press, where in terms of considerations for negotiations and where negotiations are going, it's absolutely focused on these synergies and these opportunities for working together. Okay. And whilst I'm talking in very simple terms here, as they do in the magazine, about interest rates and things, clearly there's numerous market synergies to be achieved through institutions working together, for example, and sharing information for each other, all of which is a basis for negotiation. So there's the first key question, is what is the size of the opportunity? But there's also always going to be a second question going on here. The other question may come alongside this first one, but if you were A or if you were B in this situation, this would absolutely be going through your mind at the same time. What you would be thinking is, who gets how much? And this, I think, is one of the important things about negotiation and negotiation in the 2020s and what's evolving, is that historically, negotiation has been regarded very much as a win-lose situation, or maybe a lose-win situation, if we like the zero-sum game. That's what has been described as successful negotiation, is that you get something, you end up happy, and it doesn't matter about the other person. With the amount of interactions that we have available to us now, through all the technology we have available, I believe these things are changing. And consequently, what changes here, one of the applications of this, is the order of these questions. It is not just what is the size of the opportunity, it is not just who gets how much. Historically, that is the question that's been seen as the priority. What I believe is going on now is much more the question of what is the size of the opportunity. In other words, how much cake. Let's have a look at the chat situation, and we've got a good answer from Alexander. Okay, so the A, and Alexander, you're saying the return for A is $50, although actually there's 150 if in synergy, and the opportunity therefore, okay, $100. The return for B, okay, is 400 versus 600, so they've got a 200. So consequently, split the earnings 80-20 as opposed to the fraction by of the investment by each party. Yeah. Michelle suggests no great opportunity if they work together. Well, I think if you look at 1, 2, and 3, that's the case. But if we look at the figures as we're talking about here from Alexander in the chat, we can start quantifying what that comes out to in terms of hundreds of dollars. And Alexander, well done for having a go there at both these questions. We look at the size of the opportunity overall, and also looking at who gets how much. So let's have a look at this and see where we go with these things. Because what we're doing when negotiating is having this awareness of both these questions, but also an awareness of the priority of these. How does this work altogether? On this next slide, I've shared with you an extract from the magazine article, which is talking about, first of all, the size of the opportunity. As they say, how big is the pie? I know some of the text on this slide is slightly small. That's a kind of logistic thing. And there is a link to this article coming out on these sets of slides, by the way. But in terms of the size of the opportunity, we can see that as things stand before they work together, and this is as characterized by Alexander in the chat, the overall benefit would be of $50 for A and $400 for B, is where that would be. In other words, there's a total pie, or a cake, therefore, of $450. But if the 3% could be achieved by pooling their assets, the cake size increases from $400 to $750. In other words, from $450 to $750, there's $300 of additional cake. Yeah. So the question is, how do you do this? Yeah. And the question here is, who gets how much? Do you go 50-50? And Alexander's already made the point here that actually an 80-20 in line with the split here in terms of who's putting up the money, that should actually be the way it is. So go to the chat here. And first of all, imagine that you are A. That's called and you in this example. Imagine if you are A with $5,000. Okay, there's $300 of additional cake. How much of that additional cake would you want if you were A? Yeah, and in the chat, put, A and an amount that you would settle for if you were in A. Think there about, by the way, your win. What would you want? What would be the minimum you'd expect? Yeah, have a go at that. How much do you get? You may also like to think of the position if you were B. Yeah, what would you be looking for then? Yeah, and where would you be going? Okay, and in the chat, if you wanted to, you could put a B and put how much that you've got. Incidentally, this is an example, as you can tell. If you feel this example is a little too simplistic, then make it more worth your while and add 6 zeros to the numbers and see if you feel differently about things. Okay, because the principles are involved are the same. Evgenia, you got 70, at least 60 is what you'd be looking for. So I guess, Evgenia, if you were you'd be looking for $70 out of that 300. Okay, at least 60. So you've got a slightly, a bottom line there in terms of where you're going. Okay, I can see how that might work. What other offers have we got? Okay, because what we've done here, we've worked out how big is the cake. The question is, how are we going to slice it up? Okay, and Paul, thank you. You look for at least 100, but if B cannot get that return and your contribution is essential, more than 100 might be equitable as B gains also. They do. Okay. Achilles, hope I pronounced your name right. 100, okay, but you'll take 75. Yeah. Okay, we've got a good range of answers here. So how much are you going to get? And of course, you know the answer. The answer is it depends on what you negotiate. This could be anywhere between $1 and $299 is the range of potential opportunity one way or the other. It's a case of establishing what you think is fair. Certainly in the Harvard Business Review article, you see Barry Nailbuff, who authored the article, suggests actually that each party should get $150. That even though A has only put in a 20% of the total amount invested, they've only put in 5,000 out of the 25. Actually, their action is contributing to the size of the cake they've generated. You'll notice that the $150, which Nailbuff is suggesting here, is above the amounts that have been talked about in the chat so far. Is it right or is it wrong? Well, that depends on what you negotiate. And you see one of the key trends here is not just what are you negotiating about and what you're going to get. The key route to that is having a focus on how big you are making the cake. Yeah. What is your contribution? You don't necessarily have to contribute the same amount as someone else for there to be a benefit. In most mergers and acquisitions, even those that are described as 50-50, you know how this works in practice. It's different. But you may be increasing the pie, you may be increasing the synergies such that even if your comparatively small stake is less, you can still make a case for sharing the additional slice of cake equally. This is one of the ways that negotiations may evolve during the 2020s as these ideas become more commonplace. That ultimately what benefits all of society is making the cake bigger, not just focusing on what size of slices. Of course, maybe that's always been the case. But this is getting much more attention now, and it's going to get more attention whether you are in the room or in the Zoom. So how do you go about doing this? This is really, when it comes to negotiation, I guess, similar to the way that some of you may have done when you learned to ride a bicycle. I'm confident that some of you on here and on the call have in your times, you would have learned to ride a bicycle. The question is, how did you learn to ride a bicycle, right? What did you do? And the answer is, you got on and you rode it. It may be that you had someone with you to guide you and help you, but you got on and rode it. Because you see, just understanding things like the theory of things and what you learn on PowerPoint isn't enough. You have to try it. This is, of course, where EIMF comes in, because one of the options we've got to help you develop your presentation skills is through our advanced negotiation skills training, which I'm going to be hosting and which is commencing on Tuesday, the 15th of March. You'll find the details there on the EIMF website. And what we will be doing over 4 sessions online is we'll be talking more about these principles, looking at them more depth, but above all, giving you the opportunity to practice your skills in this area so you can get better at not just recognizing the size of cake that you can achieve, but also in making sure that you get a size of cake that's appropriate for you. I hope you found that useful and interesting. I hope you're going to approach your next negotiation even more confidently than you already were. If it is helpful to stay in touch, you know where we are at EIMF, and I'd be delighted to see how I can help you improve your negotiation skills further. But it's coming up to 5 p.m. I'm happy to answer any questions or discuss any other principles there. If we need to stay beyond 5 o'clock, I'm happy to have a chat. Otherwise, I'll say thank you very much indeed. I wish you all the best in your negotiations. Panagiotis, back to you.
Thank you very much, Phil. Thank you very much for the presentation. Always, whatever has to do with negotiations, we are all keen to learn more about it. Of course, today's presentation or the example it was focused only in the financial part. But of course, when we are doing negotiation, and that's this will apply to your actual course. Depends also, you need to when you are negotiating, you need also to build relationships, and you need also to take care, let's say, not only the financial part, but maybe to see the other person as a human being as well. It's not only dealing and trying to take something, but also maybe not to take as much as you can sometimes, so that to build lasting relationship. So I guess this would be on the actual course. So that
absolutely.
So that's my very last comment. I don't know if you wish to have your closing remark. I don't see anything.
I just say thank you very much to everyone for attending, and you're going to go into a negotiation either this evening or tomorrow. I wish you all the best with that.
And maybe we can have a cake as well.
Oh yes, yeah, and have a slice of cake while you're doing it.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for being with us the last hour and taking your spare time to attend this webinar. I wish you all the best and have a lovely afternoon. Bye-bye to all. Bye-bye, Phil. Thank you very much.